Jalen Withers and JJ Traynor both announced that they are returning. We will discuss what that means for the Louisville men's basketball team next season on this episode of the Locked On Louisville podcast. Stay tuned.
You are Locked On Louisville, your daily podcast on the Louisville Cardinals. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome in to another episode of the Locked On Louisville podcast. I'm your host, Dalton Pence. I serve as a credential media member for Cardinal Sports Zone. Also do some PA announcing work for the university in various sports. I want to take this time to personally thank you for making us your first listen of the day. And just a reminder, the Locked On Louisville podcast is free on all streaming services, including YouTube, 5 days a week, your team every day. The first of two episodes on this Tuesday edition of the show, we will discuss Jalen Withers and JJ Traynor, both opting to return to the Louisville men's basketball team for next season and what to expect from both players respectively in the 2022-23 campaign. In the conclusion of the show, we will conduct the weekly mailbag segment. So a lot of good questions in the mailbag to answer. But we'll start out talking about Jalen Withers, who didn't necessarily have the sophomore season that the Louisville fan base and pretty much the rest of the country was expecting him to have. Came onto the scene as a redshirt freshman in 2020-21 and averaged 10 points per game, 7.7 rebounds while shooting the ball 55% from the field, 38% from behind the arc. This past season, however, regressed just a little bit, 5.8 points, 4.6 rebounds, 41% from the field, and a measly 23.4% from behind the arc. So, I went on record before the season, or I think maybe right as the season was starting, and said Jalen Withers, out of the entire Louisville men's basketball team, had the best chances to make or even be in the conversation of an all-ACC team or mention or along those lines. But unfortunately, what would follow in the season to come was not necessarily what we were expecting. Didn't necessarily look like he was comfortable in the role that Chris Mack and Mike Pegues put him in. Didn't necessarily shoot the ball well either. It looked like he had lost his confidence at times this season. Now, granted, toward the end, I thought that the effort was there. I thought that, he was hustling on both ends, really putting in the effort, especially on the glass. And toward the end of the season, we saw shades of what we saw from him in his freshman season. Now, obviously, he did not live up to expectations in year two, or I guess you could say year three because he took the redshirt year one, but his year two of playing, in which a lot of people thought he could possibly be an NBA draft selection come the 2022 NBA draft if he were to have a season that many were expecting him to have. Unfortunately, that is not necessarily what happened, but he opts to come back under a new head coach and a new coaching staff. Kenny Payne, long revered as a very good developer of big men and players in general, but especially big men. How he helped develop Julius Randle, Willie Cauley-Stein. The list goes on and so forth. So I believe that coming back to this program in year three, where you have a little bit of continuity, maybe not necessarily with a ton of the players, with a handful of the players, but you get an offseason working with a coach and with a coaching staff, and there's only one that's been announced. We'll talk about that in the second episode of the day. But having a head coach like Kenny Payne that may be able to unlock some aspects of Jalen Withers' game, I think is a huge luxury to have if you are, really Jalen Withers. I was about to say a huge luxury to have if you're the Louisville fan base, which is true, but it's really a luxury if you're Jalen Withers deciding, hey, I'm going to come back and I'm going to, learn instruction and be developed by one of the best big men developers in the past X amount of years in college basketball. So, And while we're on this topic of his struggles in his sophomore season, I feel like it's a little unfair to put all of the blame on him because I felt like he was playing in an offensive system to where it maybe didn't necessarily fit the identity of this team. And I say that to say this. There really was no offensive identity of this team. So how can you really put in a system or a style of play when we're still struggling to find out, okay, what are the strengths of this team? What is the identity of this team on the offensive end? I think Jae'Lyn Withers kind of got caught in the sense of, he was playing a little bit out of position, and at times I felt like the confidence wasn't there. Didn't necessarily shoot the ball well. It seemed like maybe there were some attitude problems at the beginning of the season. I don't want to speculate, but I remember Mike Pegues, basically, saying that, we expect more out of Jae'Lyn Withers. He's a very good player. He's a good person, and we expect more effort out of him. So ultimately, I think that this could definitely be a bounce back year for Withers. I think that he could definitely reach the points per game, the rebounds per game total that we saw from him in year one with the Cardinal program. Now, what does his role look like under Kenny Payne? Well, that's kind of to be determined, because you have to remember this roster needs at least 5 to 6 players to fill out the 13 scholarships. So, the verdict is still out when it comes to what his role is going to be. Regardless, whether he's a starter, whether he is a high-end role player off the bench, I think what Kenny Payne is really going to try to hone in on is working on his footwork and just, giving him, a role on offense that really suits his skill set. We've heard from Kenny Payne time and time again, you have to be adaptable to your team's skill set, which it seems like it's becoming the norm in college basketball. So I think for Jae'Lyn Withers, it seemed as a freshman he was more comfortable, getting the ball inside and then kind of, branching out to the corner if need be. But I felt like his three-point shot wasn't necessarily falling enough to warrant him being used as a stretch big in a sense. I think that Jae'Lyn Withers played better as a, more as a hybrid 5, like a small ball 5. Defensively, I think that there's some things that he needs to continue to work on, but I like the tenacity that we saw from him in year one and at the conclusion of year two. So the verdict is still out on what the role is going to be, obviously, as I mentioned, but I am extremely excited about what year three could hold for Jae'Lyn Withers on the court for the Louisville Cardinals. Is he going to be able to reach all ACC levels? Well, I'm not necessarily sure. I think that getting back to the level we saw year one and maybe even pushing it a little further, that's where we need to be. Or that's where we need to get Jae'Lyn Withers at in terms of a production level. But overall, I do think that there's no better coach to be able to develop Withers than Kenny Payne. And I think that may have played a part in why Jalen decided to come back, because of the fact that, you're now learning from a coach that has gotten guys to the league. You take Willie Cauley-Stein, for example. He comes into Kentucky, a high school football wide receiver, 7 feet tall, doesn't have an ounce of post game in his offensive skill set, is basically strictly a rim running big for his first season. Year two, he starts to develop some sort of a sense of footwork and a little bit of post offense. And year three, offensively, he looks great. Defensively, he refined his skills to where he was the defensive player of the year. I could see a similar trajectory for Jae'Lyn Withers, not in the sense that he's a 7-foot guy who's, uber athletic, but being, 6'8", 6'9", with a long wingspan that has the ability to step out and hit the deep ball. I think you're going to see Jae'Lyn Withers used in a lot of pick and rolls this season, and Kenny Payne to utilize that versatility that Withers has on the offensive side of the ball. So, needless to say, I think that what to expect from Withers in 2022-23 is to see him getting back to his old self, is to see him, competing on both ends of the court, which we saw, at the conclusion of last year, but seeing that high motor, player that really crashes the boards, could be used in a little bit of a different manner, maybe in the pick and roll game more, as I suggested, but obviously that is not set in stone. So it really just kind of depends on how much he progresses in the offseason, but I feel extremely confident that Jae'Lyn Withers is in the right place for getting developed as a big man under the direction of Kenny Payne. So I expect him to get back to that 11-7 mark in which he has gotten to in his career, which some people are like, oh, well, good. He'll get back to being, at his freshman level. Just because he averages 11 and 7 doesn't necessarily mean, that he, just stayed the course, if that makes sense. It really just kind of depends on how he plays, because his freshman year, he was very, very good. If you can get that type of contribution and production from him in this upcoming season, paired with some of the talents that Kenny Payne will have coming in, I think it could be a very successful season for not only him, but the Louisville Cardinals as a whole. So, the Louisville front court got better when Jae'Lyn Withers decided to return. Speaking of getting better, JJ Traynor has announced that he is also returning to the Louisville front court. And, I think that, like Jae'Lyn Withers, in offseason with Kenny Payne and the Louisville coaching staff could do wonders for his respective development. But what does that look like on the court? We'll talk about that here in just a second after we talk about our friends over at BetOnline. BetOnline.net is your number one source for all of your betting stats and sports info. Find all of the latest sports developments, league reviews, and news, including this year's basketball playoffs and the start of the Major League Baseball season. BetOnline is your continued source for all of your sporting wagering information, from live betting to playoffs, esports, and more. Head to the website today or use your mobile device to learn more about the trends in action. BetOnline is where the game starts. I want to take this time to thank you for making Locked On Louisville your first listen every day. Now for a big announcement. Starting Thursday, April 28th, tune in to Locked On NFL Draft's live coverage of the 2022 NFL Draft with 3 days of real-time analysis from our extensive lineup of experts and insiders. And for those of you dying to know who your team will take, catch Odyssey and Locked On NFL Mock Draft Special, hosted by Brian Peacock and former scout Matt Williamson of the Peacock and Williamson NFL Show, all week leading up to the first pick. That's Locked On NFL Draft Live on the Locked On NFL Draft YouTube page. You can also get that at Odyssey NFL Draft. That is Locked On NFL Draft Live, April 28th, 7 o'clock Eastern Time, April 29th, 6:30, April 30th, 11:30, and on the Odyssey NFL Mock Draft, April 18th, 22nd, and 25th. So moving on in terms of talking about the key returnees, we're kind of getting to the end of the line of possible players that can announce that they are returning. One player that many had projected him to come back, as they did Jae'Lyn Withers, is JJ Traynor, the Kentucky native. Didn't necessarily play a lot as a sophomore. Year one, appeared in 20 games, played 13.1 minutes per game, scored 3.9 points per contest while shooting 49% from the field, 50% from behind the arc, and 65.5% from the free throw line. And entering his sophomore season, Traynor did not necessarily play a lot at all. Only appeared in 10 games, and that was kind of more so toward the end of the year when Chris Mack agreed to a buyout. 8.2 minutes per contest, averaging 1.6 points per game, 38.9% from the field, 33.3% from behind the arc. Some people will say, well, he didn't necessarily look good in his minutes in which he got in. I'll be honest. I'm not sure how any player can play, very minimal minutes and be able to get into a groove and leave an impact. I wouldn't expect anyone to come in and play 8 minutes a game and make a big impact, especially when you haven't really played all year long. Now, there were some rumors that maybe there was some off-the-court stuff with him. I don't want to speculate. In fact, I haven't heard anything to confirm that notion, so I'm not going to, even entertain that. I'm just at the point of, Louisville struggled all season long, and JJ Traynor was on the bench for most of that time, and the fan base was kind of looking around going, why is this guy not in? Why is he at least not playing? Last year as a freshman, he showed some promise. He showed some potential. He showed some poise. Why is JJ Traynor not playing? That was a question that I continually asked myself all season long, especially when Malik Williams maybe necessarily wasn't playing to the best of his abilities. Same with, Jae'Lyn Withers. Gabe Wisnitzer was hurt for the start of the season. Sidney Curry, it took him a while into ACC play to really get going. So the questions never truly got answered, and I'm not sure that we will ever have an answer for them. So I guess that's a perfect segue into talking about what year three holds, and I think that this is kind of where it gets a little bit confusing because it's hard to project what year three could hold for JJ Traynor. For a guy who's averaged under 5 points a game both seasons at Louisville, I think that year three, with a year of development or with an offseason of development with Kenny Payne, I think that number one, it'll improve his confidence. Him and Withers both. That's something I didn't mention with Withers is having a player's coach could help with his confidence and help him on the court. But also, I think that on the court is where it gets a little confusing. What is a realistic expectation in his junior season? Well, I think that realistically speaking, I'm not really imagining or projecting that he's going to be averaging in double figures. I would assume that he could possibly be a rotational guy, a second unit player, a back into the rotation that you get, 13, 14, 15 minutes per game of, high tenacity on both ends of the court. He can offer that opportunity to stretch the court. He's shown the ability to knock down the deep ball. I think that overall, what to expect from him is just going to be, I think that maybe as a senior is when we're going to see some substantial contributions. This upcoming season, it's all about getting his confidence back, getting him into a role that best suits his skill set, and allowing him some time to operate through his mistakes. It's hard to really expect a player to make a big jump when they haven't necessarily played that much in their first 2 years with the program. So overall, I think that year three. I keep saying year three like this isn't Jae'Lyn Withers' fourth year with the program. Year four for Jae'Lyn Withers could be the one that gets him back on track and helps him see the next step in his game. I think JJ Traynor, the name of the game for him is just continuing to put on some muscle. Getting better in terms of footwork in the paint, allowing him to refine his on-ball defensive instincts and being a possible secondary rim protector, a weak side rim protector. So, like I said, just kind of hard to project it, but I do think that Traynor could possibly be a second unit guy, an into the rotation guy that you can put in for some high energy minutes that can step out behind the arc and knock down the deep ball, and that can give you good minutes on defense. He's shown over the course of the first year that he has the ability to make some winning plays. So that's really all what it boils down to. So there's only one player left that has yet to make a decision. That is fellow player in the front court, Roosevelt Wheeler, and I assume we'll know something here sooner rather than later with what Wheeler decides to do for next season. But until then, we will continue to talk about all the news surrounding the Louisville men's basketball program. But for this episode of the show in particular, the last segment will be dedicated to the weekly mailbag. I don't have any live ad reads, so if you're listening to this audio-wise, you'll hear some ad reads put in automatically. If you're watching this on YouTube, obviously you won't hear those ad reads, so we will go ahead and transition into the weekly mailbag. And there are some good questions, ones that'll make you think. I think that some of these questions are ones that the fan base has been asking for quite some time. We'll start out with basketball recruiting. A lot of people are asking, what are the chances do you think that Louisville lands DJ Wagner? Look. I don't know. I'll be completely honest with you. I have no clue. I think there's a good chance because you have Kenny Payne, you have Nolan Smith. If Milt Wagner joins the staff, you have his granddad on staff. But let's be honest, there are some other options that have to be enticing for DJ Wagner to pursue as well. That is the school down the road in Kentucky with John Calipari, the guy who coached his dad. And you also, you also have a possible G League route that it seems like nobody is talking about. So in terms of reclassification, my gut is telling me that he'll end up staying in the 2023 cycle. My intuition is telling me that he's gonna stay in that cycle. But it's kind of a coin flip at this moment. With NIL and stuff like that, it's really too hard to tell. I know that there's parties on both sides that are like, DJ is a lock to come to Louisville. DJ is a lock to come to Kentucky. I'm going to be completely honest with you. I don't have inside information on that. I'm not going to act like I do. I'm not going to say one way or the other because, frankly, I don't know. I will say that Louisville has a fighting chance with Kenny Payne now at the helm at Louisville. But I'll tell you, it's not a lock either way, or at least in my opinion, it's not. If it was, we would have already heard something. But that's just my opinion. So we will obviously, if we hear any information on that, we will definitely give you a call. We will definitely let you know. I'm sitting here, my day job. For those who don't know, I work at a pool store. I'm a sales manager at a family-owned pool store, and I think that part of my my job is finding out. Oh, hey, you have to do this, or part of my job is, hey, let me find this out, and I'll give you a call. So I'm still on work hours, it seems, but I apologize. But no, back on track. I'll let you know, and we will talk about it on this show. Chances are you'll probably hear it before it comes on this show. So just a heads up. Sticking along with basketball, there has been rumors that Rajon Rondo has some interest in joining the Cardinals staff as an assistant and player development coach. What do you think the possibility is on that, and is that a move that you would entertain? Considering that Rajon Rondo is still in the NBA, I am not necessarily sure the plausibility of that. I know that there has been some rumors. I know some people that are somewhat connected in, close to Rondo that's saying that he would at least entertain the opportunity. I'm not sure if there has been correspondence between the two parties of Kenny Payne and Rajon Rondo. But I do think that if Louisville got the chance to bring Rondo on, I would do it in a heartbeat as a developmental coach, because he's been revered as one of the brightest basketball minds of the past couple of decades. He's a player that sees the court like not many people see it. His understanding of the game and ability to see plays happen before they even happen. I mean, he's one of the best passers in the 21st century. So of course I would love to have Rajon Rondo on staff. Is it a plausibility? I don't know. Just like the DJ Wagner thing, I don't know. I don't necessarily have the inside information to that. So if I did have inside information, I would definitely let you know. But unfortunately, at this time, I do not. We'll switch over to football for the final question of the mailbag. Just a little backstory before this. Tyler Harrell, there was rumors over the weekend that Tyler Harrell could possibly be on his way to Bama. Now, that's the question, do you think Tyler Harrell ends up at Alabama, and would that be a move that hurts the Louisville offense? Well, obviously it would hurt the Louisville offense. You lose a player that is primed for a breakout season, one of the fastest, if not the fastest player in college football. It would not completely shatter the Louisville offense, though, because I do think that they have some options in that wide receiving core that can step up. Amari Huggins-Bruce, Tyler Hudson, so on and so forth. So I don't necessarily think it's one that ruins the Louisville offense. I do think it hurts, but I was caught, off guard, because I'm thinking, okay, Tyler Harrell has not entered the transfer portal. How is there talks of him going to Alabama? Is that not tampering? Assuming that people are insinuating that he's talked to Nick Saban or the Alabama coaching staff, which I'm not, claiming that he is. But if the talk is, oh, Tyler Harrell has a spot at Bama if he wants to come, how is that not tampering? It's crazy what can happen, and there's just no attention that gets paid to it. Look, I get it. It's Alabama. If you have the chance to go play with a Heisman Trophy winner, a team that you're probably going to be competing for a national title, maybe be even the favorites to win it all, you're playing under an NFL head coach that gets guys to the pros. Look, I get it. But I do think that Tyler Harrell would also succeed in this offense. So do I think that he ends up there? Well, I mean, if Alabama wants him, it's really hard to turn away Alabama. It's really hard to turn them down. So I'm going to be a realistic Cardinal fan here and let you know, if Alabama offers him a scholarship, it might be too hard to turn that down, and I'm not naive enough to know that. So I hope he stays. I really think that he can have a lot of success here next season, but I just wonder if they're already talking about Tyler Harrell to Alabama and he's not even in the transfer portal yet. I wonder where these rumors are coming from. I guess that's my question. Where are these rumors? Where are they stemming from? Is there some merit to this? Apparently enough Louisville insiders have commented on it to reveal that this has legs. But with Tyler Harrell not even in the transfer portal, it just absolutely blows my mind that we're having this conversation when he's not even in the transfer portal about possibly leaving to go to Alabama. And you're not supposed to have official communication. So I'm not being salty or anything like that. I'm just speaking my mind. If he ends up at Alabama, we wish him the best of luck. There's nothing against Tyler Harrell. I wish him completely the best of luck, and I hope at the end of the day that he stays. So we will see, and I guess we'll have that answer. We'll have the answer to that question here in the next couple of weeks, I would assume. So, but that's going to wrap up the first episode of this Tuesday edition of the show. Thanks for making Locked On Louisville your first listen of the day. Now do yourself a favor. Make your second listen to Locked On NFL Draft. Ryan Tracy and former NFL cornerback Eric Crocker do a great job of bringing the NFL Draft to life every day with insight analysis on college football prospects and NFL front offices. It's free and available wherever you get your podcast. But that's going to wrap up this first edition of this first show of this Tuesday edition of this show. Everyone have a great day, and we will see you right back here either on today's episode or on tomorrow's. Go Cards.